Hello there, I'm Kios the Ronin Beatmaker, and welcome to Lounge Ronin. All things, everything. If you're new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. And on this episode, we're going to discuss Jezebel, the Queen of Israel. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, this article was updated January 12th, 2021, written by Margaret Moose. Jezebel, slander of the Queen of Israel, Virgin of Baal, Princess of Tyre. Jezebel. Even to this day, the name of the wife of Queen Habab is synonymous with wickedness and promiscuity. She was the most depraved of the women, a murderess, an adulteress, and worst of all, an idolatress. Okay. She was so hated by some of the ancient followers of Yahweh that they went out of their way after her death to paint her as all things evil. Wow. Even going so far as changing her actual title birth from the Virgin of Baal to the Whore of Baal. But what was it that really caused such a reaction from the followers of Yahweh? How could a mere woman challenge such men of God? The city of Samaria. The story really begins after the death of Solomon. Check out my episode on King Solomon. Should be either on my live streams or should be in the Lounge Ronin playlist nonetheless. But make sure to check that out after this episode. And make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. The story really begins after the death of King Solomon, when the Israelites split into two kingdoms, Israel in the north and Judah in the south. The first king of the north was Omari, and he had established his capital in a place called Samaria. Omri built his palace complex on a hill he purchased from a man named Schumer, for which he paid 2 talents of silver. I wonder what his story is. The ancient city of Samaria today is split between Israel and Palestine control. And unfortunately, it is a precious state, threatened by vandals, robbers, and neglect, and continuous bombing. A recent proposal dubbed the Shamir Plan calls for a wide-reaching government program to increase the Jewish population of Judea and Samaria from 450,000 to 2 million, leading to more tensions with Palestine. If implemented, the plan would bring the Jewish population of Judea and Samaria to roughly the same level as the area's current Arab population. I'm sure that's a recipe for quite the feast. The best known excavations of the site date back from 1908 to 1910. And then again in the 1930s. The Palestinian Department of Antiquities, formed in 1997, is working on protecting and excavating the site, with about a dozen digs being conducted, so conditions are improving. This ancient site is one of the most documented by fact in the Bible, as well as the burial place of John the Baptist, Joseph, and the 10 kings of Israel. It is the location of this city that has caused a virtual abandonment by archaeologists until recently. Or is it something more? It seems to have been ground zero for the war between the worshippers of the old goddesses and gods and the followers of Yahweh, for whom there was no room for other gods, and no amount of violence and treachery was too extreme to achieve their ends. What troops may be buried in the city of Samaria? Here we have a street pillars at the ruins of the city of Samaria. Conflict due to a female deity. After the rule of King Omri, his son Arab became the king of Israel, and in approximately 874 BC, the princess Jezebel of Tyre, Phoenicia, was brought to the northern kingdom to be his bride and cement a trade and military alliance between the two kingdoms. It was a very advantageous agreement for the Israelites to be partners with the powerful and wealthy seafaring Phoenicians. Now, the Bible says that Jezebel's father, King Athbal, was the high priest of Baal, but according to the annuals of Tyre, which are now lost, he was probably actually the high priest of Astarte. Astarte was a Primarian Phoenician deity, a goddess, and Baal was her son, consort, or husband, depending on the region or interpretation. I contend that it is the worship of a female deity that was the deepest issue in this conflict, and consequently the goddess was removed from the story as much as possible to hide the fact of her once widespread power. The presence of the female in divine was simply an unthinkable state to the followers of Yahweh at this time, as it is to the followers of the three Yahweh-based religions today. Now, that kind of gets into conflict with true history, true origins. The last thing they'd want you to do is to be worshiping this beautiful earth, but instead worshiping their God. And when you further go back into the histories of these top tier world religions, the further you go back to realize they are practicing some very dark and ancient religion. But I'm not here to talk down on anyone's religious denominations, but as I've said in previous episodes, I highly recommend everyone do whatever religious you believe in, do a deep dive into it. Find out its true origins and ensure that you're praying and worshiping to the right God, especially during these dark times. Let's continue. Here we have a sculpture called Lady of Galera, Phoenician figure representing an ancient Middle Eastern deity, probably the goddess Astarte. The Bible purposely skirts the issue of the worship of the goddess as the prime religion at the time, consistently referring to Baal as the major deity, when that was not the case. Indeed, Baal is the consort of Astarte, who dies every year and is then reborn, and holidays of grief and celebration commemorate this yearly cycle. Does this story sound familiar? Wake up, people. In earlier times, Astarte, or Ashtoreth, as she was also known, was a consort of Jehovah before the move towards monotheism. And apparently, the Israelites had a bit of trouble adjusting as they continuously fell back into their old ways of worshiping the older dualistic deities. Remember what I said, they don't want you practicing the true religion. Keep in mind, just keep in mind, they don't want you practicing the true religion. And why is that? Ask yourself that question as you further your research. Just helping Jezebel feel at home. Jezebel was raised as an acolyte of Astarte and Baal, and she brought her religious beliefs with her to Israel. The Bible would have us believe that Jezebel forced her religion on people, but the truth is that the region was whose populace was more multinational, was far more united under one God, even though the state of religion of Israel was the worship of a single male deity. The worship of many gods and goddesses was common. The followers of Yahweh were, however, determined to bring about the end of all religions except theirs by whatever means necessary. Sound familiar, anybody? Soon after their marriage, Ahab built a house of ivory for Jezebel to honor her deities, and this gift from a husband to his bride has long been used as an example of his weakness concerning his wife and opulence of the pagans, not as a beautiful gesture to make a young woman far from home feel welcome. Remains of ivory furniture and other relics were actually recovered from Samaria in early excavations in 1908 through 1910, suggesting that the House of Ivory really did exist. Propaganda and religion is very real, and you're seeing it played out thousands of years ago. The Bible points out the Ahab erected an altar of Baal, and then almost offhandedly it mentions he almost made a sacred post. 1 Kings 13:31-33. Sacred posts can be easily passed over, but what it actually means is Ahab erected a grove to the goddesses, which was created by placing the posts of sacred trees into the ground. So clearly Ahab recognized both the goddess and Baal. Here we have an image, a photograph I should say, of a village along the eastern slope of Samaritan Mountain, believed to be the location of King Ahab's ivory palace. Fighting against and hiding from a powerful queen. Jezebel did not take her position of queen of Israel as one of submission. She was the daughter of a powerful empire and a power in her own right, and this seems to be her first sin in the eyes of the followers of Yahweh. She was a woman who spoke her mind and stood behind her beliefs and her culture. She refused to bow to their will, and this alone made her very dangerous. At some point in time, Jezebel seems to have been forced from merely attempting to achieve religious tolerance in her kingdom to moving against some of the prophets of Yahweh. The prophet Elijah was claiming that the drought affecting the region was a punishment from God, and the stress of the drought was undoubtedly causing unrest. In Kings 18:4, it says, Jezebel was cutting off the prophets of the Lord, and it does not, of course, say why. Perhaps they were causing extreme unrest by preaching in the streets that the evil of the king was causing the drought and in turn threatening the sovereignty of the king. Or perhaps the accusations were not even true. There is no mention of names or palaces or places. regardless of why. She's in fact a representative of the government. So Jezebel's actions against persons acting against the state may or may not have been warranted. We will probably never know. But this one small verse has been used to vilify her when the actions of others prove to be much more horrific. Here is an illustration of Jezebel, the Phoenician queen of ancient Israel, on a coin. In an effect to prove the superiority of Yahweh, Elijah the prophet planned to contest on Mount Carmel between himself and the prophets of Astarte and Baal, of which there are 850 in the service of Jezebel. As the story goes, 2 bulls were sacrificed and put on pyres. The acolytes of Astarte and Baal first tried to get their deities to light the fire under the pyre to no avail. But just one plea from Elijah and the Lord sent fire to light the sacrifice. After this, Elijah orders the slaughter of the 850 servants of Astarte and Baal, declaring that no one of them shall escape. This description of a mass murder of 850 people is very specific. Unlike the vague reference to Jezebel ordering the cutting off of some of the prophets of Yahweh, yet no one seems to see Elijah's acts as disgusting. Is any act acceptable when ordered by God? And you see, that's a really good point. Because why is it that, offhandedly, supposedly, she cut off a couple priests' head, but this guy over here just killed, massacred 850 people for God? And this is the thing that we have to take into consideration about the Bible, about propaganda within religion, is how they will try to normalize genocide. They will try to normalize mass murder. They will try to normalize censorship. They will try to normalize abuse in the veins of eternal sovereignty, or in the guise of internal sovereignty, I should say. So these are things to keep into mind. What happened in the past, where we went from civilizations that respected and appreciated female leaders to one that demonized them. And if you've been on my channel, you know that I've covered many female leaders of antiquity and a lot of their impacts to history, and a lot of their successes and a lot of their failures. And many of them are no different than men with power. The only difference is that they got a coochie and men got a dick. That's the only difference. But I really recommend it for any of my female listeners out there. Check out some of my episodes where we cover articles about very famous women of power in antiquity. You might be surprised that you may have not heard of a lot of them, and you may be interested to do more research into them. And who knows, maybe you're an author, writer, movie producer, what may you, and you might think about, hey, maybe this story needs to be told. Just something to think about. But the fact remains is that, they will use religion to normalize committing crimes against humanity. There's something to really think about, everyone, especially with everything that's going on right now in the Middle East. I think any modern reader should see this whole story as a trick by Elijah to get all the prophets of Astarte and Baal in one place, and then he fooled the crowd with a parlor trick by lighting a fire, or perhaps the fire never even happened. It's hard to believe a story when everyone who might have told a different version was not left alive. Then, of course, there is the account of Elijah making it rain, breaking the drought. Was this a miracle, a coincidence, or just a made-up story? Of course, this is a great tale, especially if you like mass murder. But no one has to wonder why a man who God sends down fire for and who can break a 3-year drought goes into hiding when a Jezebel, a mere woman, learns what he has done. And then he makes it clear that she wants him dead just like her prophets. Why did he not ask God to strike her dead? Instead, he ran off to Mount Sinai to hide. Mount Sinai to hide. And there you go. This man just committed mass murder just because of his belief in his God. And then the queen found out about it and wanted him dead. And so the propaganda in the religion is to make it seem as if this crazy woman wanted him dead because he killed infidels or whatever, or however you want to perceive it. Nasty work. Nasty work. Here is an illustration of Elijah in the desert, 1818, by Washington Alston. You know, let's continue. Keep that thought to myself. Jezebel helps her husband get a vegetable garden. The harsh blow of the murder of her prophets did not bring down Jezebel. So a more complicated plot was laid out to show that she was manipulated her husband and violated the laws of the land. This tale begins with her husband, King Ahab, wanting to buy his neighbor's vineyard so the king can make a vegetable garden. Yes, a vegetable garden. The owner of the vineyard, a man named Naboth, refused to sell or trade his vineyard, even for something worth more, since he inherited the land from his father, and Israelite law declared that he should keep it forever. According to the Bible, Ahab became so upset over the problem with his new vegetable garden, he took to his bed and refused to eat. Strange behavior for a powerful warrior king, but that is how the Bible tells it. Jezebel then tells him that she will get the land for him. Many interpret her reaction as one who came from a land where rulers could not do as they please, instead of as it was in Israel, where rulers were not above the laws of the land, like David and Bathsheba, for example. Jezebel is said to have written letters to the people of the town asking them to accuse Naboth of the crime of blasphemy, and then to take him out and stone him. She did this without the knowledge of Ahab, but used his seal on letters to supposedly ensure the townspeople cooperation. They obeyed without question. Naboth was killed, and the king automatically got the vineyard since the owner was convicted of a serious crime. Very tidy, except there are quite a few glaring problems with these stories. Here come the receipts. Here we have an illustration of Jezebel and Ahab meeting Elijah in Naboth's vineyard in Gilead. All right, here come the receipts, ladies and gents. Here come the receipts. First, why would the elders and landowners of the town follow such instructions without question? No one spoke up to defend a man who they had probably known his entire life, and who was completely within his right to refuse the sale. If Jezebel was truly the hated harlot, why did no one betray her plan until after the fact? It makes no sense. Secondly, if the letters were signed by the king, how did they know they were actually sent by the queen? And why would either the king or queen send out multiple letters asking people to falsely testify against a man? It seems a little self-incriminating. The tale just does not ring true. It seems at best a fabricated lie, and at worst a frame-up that may have resulted in the death of Naboth over a vegetable garden of all things. I, of course, the writer, do not doubt that something as petty as this could be true. The Bible is full of such stories. This one, however, is weaker than most. The tragic death of Naboth, however, enraged the ever-righteous Elijah, and the Lord told him to go and tell Ahab that his possession of the land by murder would not go unpunished, and that Ahab's blood will be lapped up by the dogs in the same place as Naboth's death. Elijah, however, told Ahab that it was Jezebel who would be eaten by dogs. Ahab died from wounds he received in battle after ruling from 874 to 853 BC. The second son of Ahab and Jezebel, Joram, took the throne as a legitimate king of Israel. Elijah had been taken to heaven without dying for being such a great guy, and his follower Elisha had taken up his cause. Oh man, someone's throwing some shade at Elijah. Elisha declared that one of Joram's military commanders, Jehu, would be the new king and was to exterminate the house of Ahab. King Joram was on the battlefield and called out to a greeting to Jehu, who responded to the king by saying, "How can all be well as long as your mother Jezebel carries on her countless harlotries and sorceries?" 2 Kings 9:22. He then assassinated the king with an arrow to the heart. King Joram's body was dumped into Naboth's land. Jehu then had the decapitated leaders' heads of Ahab's 70 sons taken from Samaria to the gates of Jezebel and put in a pile. Now the usurper Jehu heads to the throne of Jezebel to finally murder the one they had hated for so long. Jezebel. This is wild. Jezebel, knowing she was about to be killed, did not run. Instead, she prepared for Jehu's arrival by putting coal around her eyes, dressing her hair, and preparing to exit the world as a queen and a high priestess. The Bible likened lining the eyes as a female trick of enticement, but in Jezebel's case, it was quite possibly the face she would have worn to worship her dual deities, just as the priestess of Hathor lined her eyes. The Bible would have us believe that Jezebel was preparing to seduce Jehu in order to save her own life. But upon their arrival, she mocked him and called him Zimri, the ruler before Omri, who came to the throne by killing Elah. It was not a nice comparison and certainly not an attempt at seduction. "Is all well, Zimri, murderer of your master?" 2 Kings 9:31. She asked him, as he came for her after killing her son, his king. Jehu ordered Jezebel's and eunuchs to throw her from the window. Her blood was splattered on the walls and the soldiers' horses as they trampled her. After this victory against an unarmed woman, Jehu announced that her body should be left in the street since she was the daughter of a king, insinuating that he may have had second thoughts about how his treatment of Princess Phoenicia would be viewed. But when his men went to retrieve the body, it had been consumed by dogs, just as Elijah had prophesied. Jehu continued to purge, killing every priest, family member, and associate of the family of Ahab, slaughtering them and mutilating their bodies. God damn. Here we have an illustration of the death of Jezebel. Jezebel went to her death with courage and spirit. She never begged for mercy or abandoned her beliefs. The Bible calls her a witch and a harlot, but there is really no evidence of this, even in the massive smear campaign waged against her. She was by all accounts faithful to her husband, loyal to his family, and a powerful ally to him and her adopted homeland. There is never any evidence that she was not loyal to him, even after his death. She was, of course, guilty of one thing, polytheism, and she would have been the first to admit it. The story of Jezebel, history written by the winners. The story of Jezebel appears to have real bias in fact, as well as being a great example of history being written by the winners. Her story is so obviously colored by the religious prejudices of the writers of the Bible that I do not understand, the writer, how anyone sees her actions as so evil, and those of Elijah and the followers of Yahweh as righteous. The followers of Yahweh slaughtered hundreds of people, piled up severed heads, assassinated a king, threw a woman out the window, trampled her with horses, and then hunted down hundreds more who were associated with the family and chopped them into pieces. Yeah. The only thing that keeps this behavior from being the work of psychotic killers is that God told them to do it. Isn't that what most psychotic killers say? The death of Jezebel is more than just the death of one woman. Her death is one of those many moments in history where the worship of dual deities, the god and goddesses, began to fall to a new monotheism. And a bloodbath, a new religion began the important task of erasing the past. Hopefully, further excavations of Samaria will yield more facts about the lives of these early rulers of Israel, and the time when both God and goddesses were sacred to the people. Ironically, the murderers of all of Ahab's family to the followers of Yahweh led to Anab and Jezebel's daughter, Athaliah, becoming queen of Judah. And that's another bloody story. And there you have it. Jezebel, the queen of Israel. I apologize for everyone out there. I just realized you guys did not see the article. But it's all good. I'll have the article down in the description box if you want to check it out yourself. Highly recommend you do. So just think of this one as a nice little podcast you can just put on in the background while you go about your daily task or chores. But, as I was saying earlier, it's clear that there is a lot of propaganda going on in many of these religious texts. And you have to start asking yourself, why would they go so far and so hard into erasing polytheism? What was the danger of worshiping more than one God? These are things that many of us really need to start asking ourselves because, as I've been listening to many presentations about past civilizations, past history, issues with our chronology of time, I begin to really question many of our historical figures of medieval eras and of the 1800s, particularly when it comes to chronology of our history, as it seems that many archaeological sites throughout North America, throughout the world, articles from the 1800s, many things seem to contradict what mainstream academia is telling us and what mainstream religious scholars are telling us. So these are things that I highly recommend everyone really take into consideration when moving forward. Because we truly do not know what is going on. We truly do not know the truth. And until we get an understanding of what is the truth, we really truly will not understand how to succeed in this world at our truest form. So please, everyone, I highly recommend get out there, further your explorations into being the best version of yourself, and strengthen your resolve within your religious beliefs. Because as the veil continues to get lifted, the strength of your beliefs will guide you and protect you from what is to come. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Lounge Ronin. All things, everything. If you've made it this far, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. And until next time, stay positive, stay focused, stay true, and much love.